We had another big one, we would have kept them right on with us, but
Well, if we go with you, ours won't even be close to that, so.
well, you know, it was a 2.5-year project, and they all said, we need a little bit of a break, something a little bit less intense.
I see.
That was the largest project we ever undertook.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you seem to do a very nice job.
Well, it's the same concept. It's you have to be able to manage money, and you have to have good people and good subcontractors, and you know, if you pick the right team, and the wisdom of the school board and the townspeople to allocate the money to have the architects draw some, you know, preliminary plans really saved us, because had we not had that done, all that work, so that I could give them a GMP before town vote, COVID would have killed us. We figure it probably would have been 8 million more at the very least. So I'm very happy for the towns with the energy costs the way they are, and that school seems to be performing very well as far as energy efficiency, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, when we were there for the dedication, something was not working with the solar panels or something? There was something?
Oh, it's just, there's a green dashboard when you first come in, and we just haven't, because of all the different operating systems, what Revision uses, they're still trying to marry it so that it can work with the system that the school uses, which is a Desigo-based system. And that's about all I can tell you about it. It's way above my pay grade.
Okay.
But yeah, everything's working fine. It's just that dashboard is very interesting to look at, because it will tell you the energy usage for the day, for the week, for the month, and then they can go back and compare it to the previous year, the previous month. It can do all sorts of interesting summaries, which, you know, for young people, that's and even for the teachers, you know, they're looking and saying, oh, you can do all these different work projects with the students on it.
Yep. I was able to stay and listen to the concert they had in the hall. It was very nice. That room is very nice, and they had some very good performance. The young gentleman that played the piano was like, oh my goodness. I don't know if you stayed for that particular, did you?
I got to see him the first, when we had kind of the soft opening.
Okay.
And I think he's an 8th grader this year.
Yeah.
And very well liked by the students. I guess he's one of the best robotics students in the country.
Oh, my goodness.
And so one of the mothers beat me to asking the question, which was, is this the nicest piano you've ever played on? And his eyes kind of twinkled, and he said, it's very nice, but last year I played at Carnegie Hall. Oh. That was a really nice piano. Oh. But he does play beautifully. He really does.
Yeah, he has all those kind of flowing, he was playing, then it goes like this, and like, oh my goodness. Like,
yeah, he's really quite a performer.
He's very good. So 8th grade, so he's like 13 or something?
Yeah, yeah. But the nice thing is that the kids all like, you know, his fellow classmates really like him.
Do we just have one?
Oh, we have to, the outline? You have to use the other switch sometimes now to make all the lights come on this side of the building.
Well, that was my fault. I just flicked one so it wasn't dark.
There you go, no worries. We're working on the light sensor thing.
It's nice to have a day with no inspectors, no auditors.
Oh, how fun. What was that like?
Make your life a little easier.
Am I shorter today?
Looking back, by the Department of Labor inspection, I was, fully expecting them to look for paperwork for hours worked and time cards and workers' comp information, that kind of thing. I had no idea that they wanted to inspect utility sheds in the back of Beyond for physical safety aspects.
So are we gonna get like a report or something, or?
We're going to get a report probably this week from Melissa Rodriguez, and we have 30 days to comply with the items in the report, and she has made it pretty clear that there is no appealing or dealing, that you are to fix the items.
No appealing or dealing?
No
Jesus.
appealing or dealing.
So significant things, or?
Right now, we're wrangling over who's responsible for the boiler in this building being inspected.
Oh, okay.
That could probably prove to be the most expensive thing. Some things that I thought that they would flag us for immediately, they had no concern about. We have to buy some new exit lit signs, that type of thing.
Okay.
We have to move some things. They have a number of items that they don't like the way they're stored, or the way the building is filled, or the way the room is filled.
So did they go to every single building?
They did, as I said, including the parish house.
Were they saying they went parish house?
Not that she told me on site, but I said that no one worked there, and they said that there was always a possibility that workers would be there, so.
Do you ever miss your old job?
Not that much.
Okay, good, all right.
First time for
Just
insurance
want to make
is
sure.
really exciting.
That's true.
Maybe 10 or 15 years ago.
All right, okay. But not the current climate. All right, fair. I'm just checking in with you, making sure everybody's okay.
I didn't see your uncle on Friday. Where was he?
I don't know. He wasn't with me.
He doesn't
They were-
keep tabs on his uncle. I know that's crazy
Oh.
to believe, but
His uncle keep
I'm
tabs on
checking every
him.
day.
I do, when I go through Antrim, I do swing in and say hi.
So, yeah, they were picking on, what's his name, from Newmarket?
Steve Fournier?
Fournier. Oh, they were ragging on him that time. That it's like, blah, 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 blah. Oh, no, let's not let Steve talk because he talks for too long. There were things like that. And it was like, everybody in the room laughed because everybody knows him, but he's in the back of the room and he stands up and says something about, somebody was talking about some particular topic, so he gave his opinion. And somebody says, yeah, Steve's always got an opinion.
Oh, that's like, it's not nice.
Everybody laughed because they all know him. He's
He's been out, he's been out in the Midwest for a week at the ICMA concert
That's what he said.
with Todd and
Silly.
the rest of the crew.
Yeah, I have a meeting with him on Thursday for the Lamprey thing. It is 6 o'clock. Let's call the meeting to order. And you have a visitor for us.
I do. I had met previously with Mr. Andre Klotz, or am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yep.
And two of his associates to discuss what the board was looking at with regard to the town offices. He is one of the principals at Bowen Corporation, and if you missed Scott's conversation with him earlier, they were the construction management firm behind the new middle school in Durham. I know the board has talked with Dr. Morse. I've talked to Dr. Morse and gave rave reviews to the process, and I had asked Andre if he could come back and talk to the board per your request to talk with contractors, and he graciously agreed to be here, so.
Can you
Thank you.
Oh, yes.
come up? Andy, can you just,
Yes,
thank you.
get you a microphone.
Stand or
You can bring a
sit?
better chair if you'd like, or you can stand there. So we can get the back of your head on television.
Well, I can turn it at an angle. So thank you for having me this evening. I guess just a little bit about us. Bowen has worked for the SAU for a number of years. We've been at Mastway a couple of times doing projects as well. Built Durham Library not too long ago, and we seem to love the area because we've been at Kingston and Newington and doing libraries. So thanks for having us over to talk about this project. I'm not sure what your experience is in the world of construction, but I I can kind of walk you through the process. We've done probably 24 municipal projects as well as many schools over the years, so we're very familiar with how, you know, things work well. And one of the, you know, first things you, as a committee, you have to talk about what you need. And I see you've already kind of done that, so that's a good first step. And, you know, usually there's a committee that's formed that is trying to work and work with the select board. So, you know, we always coach the committee that, you know, talk to the select board and find out what they will support for funding so that you can start to develop a budget for that. In the world of construction, there are 3 delivery systems that are typically used. The one is called design build, and in the design build process, I'm not a fan of it because it's kind of keeps the owner in the dark. If you have a really savvy person on your committee that can really first develop a specification with the design builder or the design builders that you're going to interview, then you have a fighting chance. But if you don't have that, then the design builder, he's hiring their own architect. And so the architect works for them, and you lose that check and balance where under the other delivery systems, you've got an architect that is contractually bound to the customer that has the, you know, duty to review all the work that the contractor does, which I think is a real plus. And I don't, you know, some people will say that design build is the cheapest way to do things. Well, it may be the cheapest, but you're usually going to get the cheapest too. And so the other types that you can choose from are what is traditionally called the design, bid, and build. So you hire an architect to design, and then again, you need some expertise amongst yourselves to monitor the architect, because sometimes architects get a little carried away with what they're doing and they lose sight of your budget, which is important. And then you can potentially run into the issue of, oh, I got to rebid this, or I have to redesign it, which costs you more money. The other thing is that during the bid process, it's a melee when the bid day is coming, because everybody's calling their bids into the various contractors and they're trying to make decisions. They really don't have an opportunity to say to the electrician whose number is 200,000 lower than everybody else's, you know, you got to look at your number again, you got to make a mistake. It's usually they send it to you at the last minute and then you have to make a decision, and then later, oh my goodness, he's made a mistake, but we carried his number, and it's a problem. The last delivery system is called construction management, and it's the one that we promote the most. You know, we've done all 3 types, but this is the purely open book. You still get all the advantages because first you go out and solicit invitations from architects to provide you with proposals. So you're getting competitive proposals, and you have the opportunity to interview them just like you would any other way. And then you can say, well, you know, this guy is maybe number 2 in proposal, but we really like them and they make us feel comfortable and good about what they're doing. Let's hire them. The same process happens with the construction manager. You go forth and you get the proposals, you talk to the ones that you like the proposals from, and then you say, we really clicked with them. So you're not obligated to take the lowest number because you have other factors that you say, well, they can offer us this, they have more experience working in our town, or, you know, great reputation in the area, whatever. So once you choose one, and let's just use the construction management as an example, then you have someone on board as an architect, and you have someone on board as the construction manager, and they work together through the whole design process for you. And there's a lot of meetings, between architect and their design team and the builder. They'll interview you for what you like. And you've done a lot of work already you've got a kind of a tentative plan. But the architect will still talk to you a little bit and may make some suggestions that, geez, this might flow a lot nicer or something like that. It might not be so boxy. But in the meantime, when they're doing all that, we look at it and say, okay, how much should just add to the project and, make recommendations. And it's the same thing with materials. As we start the process with this, we'll give you an initial, here's what we kind of think it could cost. And you either say, oh my gosh, that's way more than we can support. And if that's the case, then we talk about, well, what do we do different? Because you got to remember there's three things to a project. There's the size of it, there's the quality of it, and there's the price. So we always tell you, you can pick two, but we have to get to pick one. Or we have to all work together and manipulate all the parts. But the great thing about construction management is that there's never too much work done by the architect before your committee has a chance to review it and say, yeah, this is on the right track and we're feeling good about this, or no, we're getting way too expensive for what we can support. So that's something that we really do promote for you. And then when it comes to actually finally pricing it, you still have all the advantages of the bidding world. And what we do is we go out, once the plans are pretty well complete, and we'll put it out to bid, just like the general contractor would be. But the difference is that when we collect all these bids together, we sit down with you, and we have them all already checked out, so that this guy, he was missing three things, he would add this much more, and now suddenly he's not low anymore. But you may say, well, but they do all the work in town and we really would like them, so even though they may be a little bit higher, let's use them because we have a great relationship with them. So you get to make the decisions along with us. We'll make recommendations like, well, the guys you really like are just too small to do this huge project. We had that happen at the school, for instance, where companies like Yates Electric, who we love, we called them and said, no, that's way too big for us, and we don't want to tie up all of our people doing that. But they felt really good about the fact that they were asked. And so we work, again, we ask for your input to say, please call this company, this company, this company, they're local, we like them, and so at least they feel like you care about them. And especially when you're trying to get a bond passed and you are asking local companies, or giving them the opportunity, you're going to get some more support for it that way. We even go to the extent of, let's say, having a contractor's night where once the plans are close to being done, they come into the meeting room and plans are laid out, they can look at them, they can ask questions and get a level of comfort that either, yes, this is something we want to do, or no. But again, they've been asked, they become more supportive. So, you get all the positive bidding, and then you move into the construction phase. And all the while, the construction manager will give you, to-do lists, a preliminary schedule, things that, we need to make sure we get, this permit, that permit, either DES or DOT, whatever. And that's all part of the early process so that, there's no surprises at the end. And then, you'll get right in the beginning, you'll get a budget sheet that says, here's everything in the project. And every time we do a new estimate, that gets updated. Once we start the project, then you have, this budget gets turned into our requisition sheet. So it's basically duplicated. And then every month as we go through and build some of the project, we bill for it via the architect who signs off on everything, signs their name to it, and then it goes to your accounting department for, payment. So then, if Andy wants to be a second set of eyes on it, that it goes from the architect to him and then out. But it's the way we like, because everything's open, the fee that's getting charged, what the superintendent who's on site is getting paid every month. There's no like, well, we're also gonna bill you for his mileage or, for the vacation day. No, everything is, we do it on a weekly basis that, he's there, if he's 40 or even 50, it's the same rate. It's him getting back and forth from home to the job. So we think it's a very fair, open, honest way of trying to do business. And everybody does a little differently, and when you get the proposals from different CMs, you can analyze them and say, well, and the architect will definitely help you with that, because they're familiar with that process, and can say, well, yeah, they've got all this extra things hidden in this line item, so we have to balance it to make the fees all look, kind of fair. But that in a nutshell, is they'll get you through the start of the construction every week. We like to start off with meetings with whomever you designate as your representative. Meet with the architect on site, and we talk about progress, we talk about questions, as things start to grow and build, you get to look at the outlets and say, holy mackerel, we forgot it. We have a whole computer system going over in this corner. So before things go too far along and it gets expensive because you're fishing behind sheetrock, you have opportunities to review all the different components as the building's going up. At the middle school, it was unreal how many times we had to do that with all, the teachers were all taking tours and saying, where's the outlet for my refrigerator, kind of thing. But it's great because, if you can do it early enough and the department people all have a chance to peek at things a little bit, it's helpful. So, if there are things that weren't picked up by the architect initially in discussions with different departments, we carry contingency in the budget. The contingency is for whether we hit ledge when we're digging, whether the ground suddenly has a burial ground in it and we have to, or whatever. It's there to take care of unforeseen things in the project. And as the project progresses and you get out of the ground, it's there for, we really want 4 more outlets, or we'd like to do a little better grade of lighting, or whatever the case is. We work with you and say, okay, you can use 20% of the contingency at this point. So the contingency, once we're done, or as we're getting done, is yours to either return to the taxpayers or to spend to make the building the way you want it. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to build another municipal building for a long time, so you want to get it as efficient and right as you can. We'll talk to you about, do you want to do any type of real energy efficient type things? You want to look at geothermal, you want to look at solar. Those are all conversations you have early on, and then we start to make provisions for those, even if it's as simple as running conduit up to your roof so that you have the array. Or you can look at, you want to use electric heat pumps, is there an advantage to do geothermal for your particular building? There's lots of different options, and the geothermal has a higher initial cost, but boy, is everybody smiling over in the school district right now, because it's paying for itself faster than they ever thought it would. So what kind of questions so far?
Questions around there?
There was so many of them right there. That was really good, thank you.
I have one. Have you guys worked with, what is it, ICF?
Yes.
So you've done
We
buildings-
actually did Kingston Fire Station with that this last year.
Pluses and minuses versus builds? What are your views?
I didn't see anything negative about it. It wasn't one of my projects, but there aren't a lot of companies that do it. So the only negative I would really say would be, it might be, if you have enough time to plan, then you'll get somebody lined up early enough. And that's, again, it's an advantage of the construction management process. Just as an example, the Oyster River School project, it wasn't approved till March, but we bid the project out in October with, 50% plans. But we're confident enough in the architect and what we were going to need to do that they gave us permission to make a handshake with all of the subcontractors that were low bidders, especially the important ones, and say, the job's yours, I'll let you know March 10th, I think it was. And so they were lined up right then and able to start in May, full bore. They had purchased materials before the COVID increases started to happen. And like I said, that saved millions of dollars over the long run. So, yeah, I don't think ICF would be an issue because again, you'll have the similar type of things. You know, if you decide you want to start this next May or 2 Mays from now, the one thing I would suggest is if you can get an architect on board and allocate some money for them to begin drawings so that you can develop a good price. Because when you're selling a project, this is the other thing that's used. In Meredith, where we're based, we managed to get 3 major projects passed in 7 years. Community center, fire station, police station, and fire station. And each time what they did is they had money set aside for the architect and maybe $10,000 or so for the construction manager to draw the plans, and we gave them a kind of a GMP before December when they were developing the budget. At town meeting, we had put it out to bid in February, and we had firm bids from everybody, and the select board got to say, we're going to amend the article downward by so much because we now have firm bids. And all the people in the audience are going to say, well, how do you know that's really going to be what it's cost? Well, because we have bids for everything. Boy, does that sell. So, just this thing to kind of think about in your planning, sometimes you're really anxious to do something, but sometimes if you do it in steps so that you have that first phase of, let's get everybody on board, if in March you can get money allocated for that. And, if you go through the interview process, you can get the quote from the architect, here's what we need for preliminary buildings, you can get the quote from the CM for pre-construction costs. And then that can happen. And then you have, kind of a year to get the plans developed to sell the project properly, and you have a much easier time of getting it approved.
Have you talked to him about our timeframes? Sounds like possibly not.
Well, we've talked about 2 timeframes, doing it as quickly as possible, and his description of possibly taking a little longer to. And one of the reasons for the time frame is we're leasing the town office buildings that we use now for $5,000 a month. We can get out of that lease in a given year. And we've also got we've received the bond for this building, I believe, last week, so that bond project is coming to an end, and the transfer station is fairly soon as well. So there's an opportunity to say bonds have expired. If we took the money that we're paying for the bonds and interest and the money that we're paying for office rent, we could float a new bond without any particular impact.
So that would be a good selling point.
Yeah, and we don't want too much space in there for
Somebody else to get there.
Yeah.
or the tax rate to drop and people.
So you'd have to get the approval in March and then begin the design process at that point. You wouldn't have any funds available prior to, or do you have something that, you probably have to get it approved by voters anyway, right?
Yeah, at this point, I'm aware of no.
Well, what we've talked about is doing the whole presentation, this particular, deliberative session into January, beginning of February. So that's what we be looking at. So in terms of doing all this other pre-stuff before that. So in terms of crunch time, because what you were talking about is, go to the March thing, ask for the money, and then take the whole year to do and bring back a proposal. We've talked about doing it like between now and the bond hearing. So I don't know, in terms of your eyes or your perspective, is that too kind of quick for you guys in terms of ballot, or what are your thoughts?
Well, you're going to need some level of plans. And so that would be the question, is how would you finance paying an architect, for instance, and an engineer to do, site plans and things like that? I mean, we can give you a number based on very, very little information, but it's gonna be high.
Right.
Because we have to protect you. If you go out to bond, and obviously protect ourselves too, but, I've never had a project where I've had to ask the customer for more money. And, it would be very difficult, for you folks if you were standing there saying, well, owners, we asked for 2 million and now we need 3.
Yeah, that usually doesn't go over well.
No. So that would be the challenge. If it was a matter of having some budget numbers put together, you could go through that process. And for instance, like, we very often have done, a bunch of preliminary work, and with the understanding that we're not going to bill for it until you at least get the money approved, to pay us after your town meeting. So we're willing, and I think other companies too, would be willing to take certain level of risk. And it's quite possible that you could get some, work from architects the same way. So if you're confident that you can sell the project without, and at the end of the day, depending on how much information we can develop, we can give you a more accurate price depending on what's available. Like right now, I just took a quick stab at what that one drawing was.
Oh, okay.
But we don't know anything about the site yet, until we at least walk it together. But if we have the opportunity to go down there with the people who can point us in the right direction as far as where's drainage, where's any type of water or sewer, whatever there might be, then that helps. So, that's just a process that.
So in terms of this, we'll call it seed money, if you will, in terms of, what are we talking about in terms of your estimate, in terms of for your time plus an architect's time to get us to the point that we can present something that's not finalized, but close?
Right, I think that if you don't have the money available right now, I think the way to do that is, I would say somewhere in the $10,000 range for, estimating and all the, type of reconstruction stuff would probably be fine. I can't really speak for architects, but, it might be a $20,000 figure, 25, somewhere in that. Again, depending on how much you need and whether we want to try to get a little bit of site engineering done. But again, that's a matter of, you can, sometimes people like to hire the architect first, and sometimes people will hire the CM first, just so you have someone that can kind of start to spearhead and say, we need this, we need this, we need this. And, I think that's the first step that you got to do. And, as a municipality, it's just a matter of putting together a quick RFP, saying this is what we're looking for, then advertise it, get your proposals. But, I always caution people, it's very nice to say, oh, we want you to do it, go do it. But you're going to have to answer to people like, well, why did you pick them and didn't give anybody else a chance? So you really, as much as I'm always envious of the people that just get handed this stuff. But I told Dr. Morse that also. They said, this is a big project. You have to make sure that you do. And he agreed, and we were fortunate enough to get there eventually. But that's the right way to do it, and to protect yourselves and the voters' interests, that you go get some proposals.
What more would you have to see for RFP?
Well, have you ever done one before?
For me personally, no.
Years ago when we did this building, but nothing in terms of, I think this is the last thing we actually built. This is in 2000, 2003, so nothing said, well, I take that back, we did do the transfer station. I don't remember if that went out to bid though. I don't remember that.
Yeah, I don't know, I can certainly look that up for you.
So nothing recent on it, nothing recent.
I mean, we could kind of find some that we've received and kind of put something together and send to you, and then you can edit it as you need to, just so that you kind of have, what, you put in what you're looking for, and what, same thing for the architects, to get some people together. And that I think would be your good first step to get things moving. Then, to get things ready for the voters, if you want to have some type of a GMP involved, then that's what we'll kind of put into the RFP, saying that, give us a proposal. And, I would think at least you'd have to have language in there that said, we will guarantee that you will be paid for your services at town meeting. So you have to, kind of make sure that you can guarantee that.
Yeah, I'm a little bit familiar with that. Other municipality that I was at before I came here, we had entered into a similar agreement with Fenton Grown in Rochester for a proposed ICF building, and that was the same approach. We didn't have any money at the time, and they were willing to move forward, but we had to give them some guarantees that we would pay the outlay.
So what happens if you offer you're paying outlay, but then they don't want it? Doesn't go through town meeting?
You're still on the hook to pay.
So you have to figure out where to get it from.
Yeah,
one
right,
way or the
exactly.
other. So it makes more sense to just figure it out, yeah, sooner.
What are you seeing for building prices in terms of materials and things like that, in terms of labor as well?
Where's my crystal ball?
Right,
Please
Do you have a
just-
crystal ball?
It's still tough out there, but I think that we're finally starting to see slowdowns in housing. The interest rates shooting up the way they are, that is starting to slow down a little bit. Because everybody's in a frenzy, and I love capitalism, don't get me wrong, but the increases that are coming, still, 10% for this and 15% for that, you're saying, well, okay, now, fuel prices have completely reversed, so we're down closer to where we were, and yet, but the labor shortages are real across everywhere, every trade, every business, and as you know, we're being forced to pay more, and that's affecting costs in everywhere, from the trucking, from the manufacturing, to putting things up. I'm still thinking 6% for this year is going to be kind of a minimum. And I wish I was a better economist, but I don't see that changing for at least another year. And for the last 20 years, for the most part, I did 2.5%, maybe 3%, and I could come very, very close. If someone said, hey, remember that estimate you did for us? Well, how much would it be now? Or, just using a project to tell some other client that, well, I think your new fire station is going to be about this. We could come really, really close. But what happened, we had the electrical contractor that was doing Oyster River. They had a condo project in Maine. Second phase came along, they repriced it. It went up 25%. 25%. And that was the first year that COVID had come along. How do you predict that? And so we're still kind of feeling our way, but we've seen substantial increases in the cost of buildings. You take your average library, they've probably gone up $50 a square foot.
Any other questions for Andre? No. Does anybody in the audience have a question for Andre?
Well, I just want to point out, getting back to what work's been done, there wasn't too long ago that we had work done by the Valley Brenziger for an office building.
I saw that.
And along with that packet, there was, I believe there was site work done as part of that packet.
It's part of the estimate, yeah?
Yeah, part of that estimate. So there is some There is some history that's more recent than Mr. Bugby indicated. Yeah, perhaps he forgot.
I did share at least the basic LVA site plans.
Yeah, I think I have that here.
And we also, after that, we had Burke and Costanza. John, what was it? How was it?
Castagna
Costanza.
and Richard Burke.
Yeah,
Rhymes
there's-
with lasagna, I suppose it was like that. But yeah, we have those, and those were the whole project in terms of spec'd out, in terms of the building. The building is different than what they spec'd out. But yeah, in terms of site work and stuff like that, the site we're thinking about, it's a sand, John, you'll have to help me, how many feet down do we think the sand goes? Like
The
20 feet?
deepest we know of is
Nice.
56 feet.
56. So,
It's
and it's relatively level, a 4-foot contour change over the whole
the
site.
entire 6 acres, not counting the bog,
Yeah,
is 4 foot, highest to lowest.
so it's relatively
So
flat.
Any place you pick is around 2
Yeah.
feet.
So you don't have any Durham clay?
Nope,
No,
that's that
bad.
behind.
and in terms of any kind of lines, there's nothing there. There's no, that's one of the problems we have at that particular location, because there's septic tanks, but no leach fields for the buildings that are already there. So that's something like phase 2, not part of what we're talking about right now, but we'd have to put in a septic system. There is a well there that most likely will need to get moved, so that would provide water for all the buildings in that particular area. So, but yeah, I don't think the site's gonna need any blasting. There is a bog close we have to be concerned about in terms of runoff. But it seems like a pretty good site, but
So you were gonna do the entrance off of that kind of side road that
Well, directly across the street from the Wednesday Hill Road.
Wednesday?
so of course we'd have to work with DOT. We've had preliminary discussions with them, so there's certain things they're looking for. But yeah, so basically Wednesday Hill comes in at a weird angle, and they wanted a T off that, so that would go into this particular facility. So
Okay. So I will be back in town Wednesday morning. If you have a chance to look at any other documents that might be on file for, previous, I can, take a peek at those as well, and then that'll help, I'll work on the RFP, during the week and get it back to you, and then you can.
did you share because there's 2 designs we're looking at, I don't think we've officially decided, but there's a 1-floor design and there's a 2-story design. Which one did you
I had
share?
met with them and shared the 1-story design. I
Okay.
don't believe I gave you the 2-story.
Now, you have an elevator going to the basement,
Right.
so there's another floor on top of that as well?
Possible.
Possibly.
We're trying to figure out how to save money, because if it's 1 floor with no elevator, that's one thing, but then once you throw an elevator in, you're adding a huge expense, so then does it make more sense to go up than out?
Because we also have that drainage issue, so if you have less impervious cover, save you something, but those are things we need to
There
consider.
is economy to doing multiple floors, and because it's a public building, you have to have handicapped accessibility anyway. So, once you put the elevator in, it's a little bit more to go another floor, but it's not, you're already putting the elevator in the shaft and digging the pit for it and all that, so, we had some very good savings by going to 4 floors. And we'll probably have the most fit middle schoolers
Yeah,
in the state.
we've all done those stairs a bunch of times, that's a lot of stairs. But that's the thing that we were looking at too, is we're not attached to a certain idea, we're attached to trying to make it a good building that everyone can use, and that is affordable, so whatever that, flexible.
Yeah, and the architect will ask department heads questions about who has to play next to who, and then, they'll work with the CM to say, all right, so what's gonna be the most economical way to do this, and,
Yeah, we've had conversations with the department heads about those contingencies in terms of how things flow. The other thing is, we're kind of like Durham, in terms of, the middle school is very energy efficient, So we're looking to see what we can do, the best thing. I don't know if we ever get to LEED certified, but maybe how close can we get? Because also, for at least for me, I don't speak for the ladies, it's a balancing act in terms of, you know, what can we get, how much is it gonna cost us, and how much is it gonna cost us over time in terms of operating. If it makes financial sense, it makes sense to try to do it. But that's just me, but I know the townspeople are interested in that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah, and if you have a large enough site where, you know, you can have even ground-mounted solar arrays as well, if you have the right exposures.
I'm very interested in learning more about the options there.
Yeah, you know, we have to admit that something's happening to the planet,
Yeah.
and, you know, eliminating as much fossil fuel use makes a lot of sense. And, you know, maybe because we are in New Hampshire and it gets cold sometimes, you know, there's a backup system at the middle school, but it doesn't get used a lot. And so I think that's a good selling point and a wise, sustainable type of.
Probably because you're capturing all that heat from all the students going up and down the stairs.
Well, yeah, and with heat pumps, you know, that are running on electricity, when you're doing all that solar,
Right.
it's amazing. And then, you know, with the geothermal system, you've got 45-degree constant either cooling or heating, so you're saving in how much the electricity has to cool or heat. So it's a good system. And it does cost more to start, to dig the wells and things, but it's looking good now anyway.
Anybody else have any more questions, Rhonda? Anything else you'd like to ask her? No, all set?
What time are you thinking roughly on Wednesday?
So we have an 8 o'clock meeting, so I could probably be by like 9:30, 10 o'clock,
Yeah,
something like that.
Go to work till 11.
We're also wondering what's going on in the world of the school board, because we really don't, we've gone up against them before and lost and don't really know how to, yeah, so it'll be interesting to find out more.
I don't think there's any big projects. They're looking at possibly, he hasn't introduced it to the board yet, but there's the way they serve the students at Mastway Cafeteria is cumbersome, and they almost feel like it's so awkward. So we might try to do a little thing in the winter, you know, over Christmas break, just to change so the students aren't actually coming into the kitchen.
That'd be great.
And then they're looking at potentially trying to get past a little bit of an expansion to the cafeteria. That's all I know of as far
Yeah,
as.
so not a huge, okay.
No,
Because,
nothing.
you know, the middle school came up and other things here and,
Yeah, at the same time.
yeah.
That was kind of a big one.
Yeah, so,
So they'd be kind of expanding out toward the parking lot area?
Yes, yeah. We looked to make sure that we could keep all the traffic flow the way they have it now, and it will work, so
all right.
that's in the planning
Just
stages.
tell them we're gonna be real grumpy. We have to fight them right
Well,
now.
tell them to keep the costs down, and then we'll affect the tax rate, and then we'll be okay. Because we got that the last time we did, when they were doing the middle school, it's like, geez, they want all this money for the middle school, and we don't want to do your thing,
Yeah,
because,
that's,
so you get in competition like that, and
No, I get it. We have the same thing in our town.
yeah, you gotta.
And it's a funny thing, though, that the school, pretty much everything just gets
Right.
passed, and every penny at town
Welcome
meeting
to our
is something.
lives. And we are 20%, actually less than 20% of the,
we have that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just, you guys must have regular town meeting, right?
Yeah, are you SB2?
We have SB2. But, you know, in terms of over the years, they'll sit there and they'll have a discussion about $2,000 for an hour, and then they'll pass something that's hundreds of thousands of dollars, just like that. So, you know, you never can tell. Different things motivate different people to come out and speak, so. But that's their right, which is fine.
Well, I've lived in New Hampshire for 42 years, but I'm not a native, and the first town meeting I went to was just the most marvelous thing I ever saw. You know, people got to speak, and you know, people listened, and compromises were made. I was like, boy, this is really nice. And then, you know, from where I came from, there was none of that at all. So
It's good.
It's a nice way of doing business, for sure.
All right.
I was impressed with the initial presentation because Andre's partner that came with him used to work at Gunstock and skied with a bunch of people that I used to ski with.
Oh, I see. Okay. I see.
Now we start to get the real story.
Okay.
I knew it was something. That's great.
Excellent.
He and his family, I just found out, are gonna be in a video for a real estate agent. He says, I got to drive a Bentley. They're like, you know, if you could imagine the old American family, like from the old 60s, that's him, you know, wife, 3 kids, one's already, you know, married and has 2 of her own, and they're just so cute.
Wait.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Well, I
Nice to
appreciate
see
you
you again.
inviting me, and, you know, any questions, you can send them to Andy. I'm happy to answer them, and I'll be in touch. We'll work on that so you can get it started for the RFP.
Great, sounds
Great,
good.
thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Have a good night. What else do we have? Mr. John, do you need to speak with us?
I have 2 things.
Okay.
Do I need to go up there?
Yeah.
Come on down.
Just looking at your plane.
So the 2 drawings that I sent out, those were not intended to be final versions.
Mhm.
It was expected that there'd be additional versions based on the select board discussion. The discussion to date has been, oh, it's great. So I don't know if you actually plan to improve it or not.
Well, my discussion would be, John, it looks great. So I don't see anything that I've read at the moment would like to change. I don't know about you ladies, but
Okay.
Yeah, I think that at some point it has to go down to the details with the architect. Like there's some things like I'm looking at the second floor and I see the toilet room and the custodial is there and then you have this hallway. So to me, I'm like, ooh, can you use that space for some sort of sitting by the window or something? Like there's little details that I think you can, use spaces that have been created or whatever, but I don't think there's inherently, I think those are architecture issues.
Well, I was actually thinking about the finance clerk and the finance officer, and if those both still exist.
Oh, that's a good point, yep.
That's-
Good thinking.
That's a lot
a
of
good
space.
question, and
Yeah.
the same thing with the files.
Right.
Right.
See, this is where I really expected that there would be several versions
Right.
and questions about the sizes of the rooms. And yes, you can go ahead and decide, well, you're going to do that with the architect. So right away, you're paying thousands of dollars to again be slow at coming up with the answers. And when you're paying thousands of dollars, it's going to push you into making quick decisions. So that's your choice.
I guess for me, I'm just wondering if the architect comes and we square this down to the square feet, and we've done it all out, and then like, you know what, let me show you this other thing. We've put a lot of energy and time into something. I mean, I think what he was saying, the basics that the architect needs is who needs to be next to who, what are the safety situations, and what are our things. So for me, if it's 14 and a half or 12 by 11, that's not the biggest concern and question. So I guess for me, I didn't feel that I had to go into more detail.
It's not necessarily more detail, it could be something completely different. So you can talk about, if you're looking at that second floor, in this design, it keeps finance officer, finance files, and finance clerk near the town administrator and assistant administrator. And puts meeting room around the other end of the corridor. Maybe there's an arrangement which changes those. My expectation, and this is really for you to call, my expectation was that if you work on this, and again, this is when I talked at the very first meeting about select board producing product and product being needed, if you work on it, you're doing it with your time, and you're not spending the town's money on architects. Certainly, I've made it clear that I've drawn this on a half-foot grid, haven't paid attention to what the actual wall thicknesses are going to be. All those walls are drawn at 6 inches thick, except for the exterior, which is just drawn at 12 inches. So this is not intended to be the architect's drawing. The architect is going to actually talk about what is the wall construction and does it end up being 4 5/8 thick or whatever. But if you have to start with the architect and explaining to him the required adjacencies and how different groups within the office building work with each other, you're going to spend a lot of time. And that means money. And that's your decision.
Well, I think, well, we've done this numerous times, specifically you and I on different committees, so I think we've got a lot of those adjacencies already built in here. I want to use, I want to use the architect's expertise. This is the idea, this is the plan, this is the vision, if you will. I don't necessarily like that particular word, but take us to the next step. That's what this person is going to be doing for us. They're going to be paying for that. We're not going to get it for free. So my thought process is, this is what we think we want. Take it to the next step, Mr. or Mrs. Architect. So
Okay.
that's my thought process. So.
And I think this is the question I have too. There's a lot of things I could talk about and go through and stuff. Is that what you want to be doing, is spending, like all that time?
I think I've told you before, I don't think I've ever been on a project that, from my perspective, seems to be as haphazardly planned as this one.
But I guess for me, the question is, why are you the person that has to do all this? So,
Well, my
like-
expectation was that you would also be involved,
right, so
but
I think that's the thing is there's a lot of people that would have to have input. Just today I went to a different town's public planning and zoning, and I was thinking how hard it would be to get up, leave, and then go talk to somebody, and then have to go back to a desk. How nice it would be to be at your desk there when you need to talk to somebody quickly. There's a lot of things you could go through details, but I think that each person would have to discuss the different things. And my question is, we don't even know if we're doing a 1 or 2 floor building, so how much time do you want to put into these details right now? So I guess it's just a question of who gets to deal with the hassle of the stress. And how to, it might be that an architect comes in and says, we obviously can't do this, let me show you. And then you restructure, and then you still have to ask this question. So I understand that you would like us to be more prepared. I just don't know how to be more prepared for something. I do not know what they're going to say. Like if, does anyone else understand what I'm trying to say? Stop talking.
Just, John and I did a lot of work, and I had the time to work on those particular committees. I do not have that time now. I have other things to do, so I would love to dig my teeth into all this, but I do not have the time. And it would be a disservice to the town if I said, oh yeah, I'll do this. It would be not good. So I'd rather pay somebody else to come in and do it professionally, because we're gonna have to hire somebody anyways. We might have to pay them extra, but I just can't, I don't have the time to do it, so.
okay. I think our previous experience
Yeah.
should have taught us a lesson. And it doesn't seem to have.
Can I get back to something Paul said earlier about my perspective of watching this the last couple of times we've gotten to the point of having a bond issue? I thought a lot of these design things had been done. How different is the vision of this building from the office building portion of those other projects? Didn't we deal with a lot of these design issues?
That's what I thought too.
Yeah, the thing, this is different, well, we've done some minor tweaks, but the other building, I don't think we could even use, because there's a lot of space in there for storage. And we've taken all this kind of storage out of this building and put it into the basement.
but things like who needs to be with
Right.
whom.
Those are
and-
adjacencies, yes.
I mean, the overall structure of what the building's trying to accomplish, whether or not it has a room for file cabinets, to me is a detail, but, I mean, I'm looking at function
Well,
stuff, and I thought we had resolved a lot of those issues.
That's what this is basically taking that plan that we had done and
Okay.
taking out the extras and then kind
Okay.
of wiggling back, and that's why I was feeling like.
So does that
farther ahead
have,
than-
John, am I misquoting what happened before?
What happened before is we got a design from an architect which did not come close to meeting those adjacencies that were required. And that's why I volunteered to start this process, because the required adjacencies are well-known by this group. They were well explained to the architect. But at the end of the day, you have an architect who is trying, or I don't know if it's an architect or a draftsman, who's trying to take those details without knowing the people and what the groups are and how they work, and trying to make it fit. And
Ultimately, they didn't make it fit.
no, they didn't make it fit.
Didn't work.
Have we
Um,
made it fit, John?
Hmm?
Have you made it fit?
Yes.
Okay.
But if I can't possibly claim that I've made the best design, yes, it does meet all of the requirements for all of the adjacencies that I know of. It does provide all of the spaces that were asked for. I did have a second question here. I did start drawing basement floor plans, but one of the things I don't know is what is the required active document storage in the basement. Up until a meeting or 2 meetings ago, it was thought that all of the storage in the basement was archive storage, storage that no one would have to get to on anything like a regular basis or a normal basis. It was thought that it was, could well be something that no one would look at from year to year, perhaps. But now we know that some of it needs to be accessible. So
The assessing paperwork certainly needs to be accessible in the planning and zoning files.
So when I started drawing that, I didn't have any idea of how much of planning and zoning's files needed to be accessible. Is it all the existing?
I would say the only thing that they have taking up a lot of space that they don't need access to are the planning board minutes, which they have held on to in perpetuity, most of which, or a good chunk of which we were able to digitally move. We haven't gotten the final product back on that yet. But those are certainly, every 3 to 6 months, somebody comes in and wants to see what happened at a planning board meeting in the late 70s, that sort of thing. The site plans, of which there are large number of files, and the commercial development plans, of which there are a large number of large files and specialty file cabinets, are accessed pretty regularly, and the assessing documents, and those are the files in the meeting room at the front of the office, sort of directly behind the entryway between Denise and my office. Those files are accessed continually. We have taxpayers regularly coming in to look at the assessing file and find out, there's information in there like where the septic tank was put, or where the well was originally sited, that sort of thing that regularly used.
And those aren't going to be digitized anytime soon?
Depending on how the budget moves forward, but
Okay.
it's probably not likely that we're going to be able to digitize all of that, no.
So basically, it's essentially everything that they have now, except for the planning board minutes, which I've seen are on open shelving.
Large open
Big
shelf,
shelving,
ceiling to floor.
Mr. Bell has a question or a comment?
I'm listening to the board and the town administrator attempt to move this in a particular direction. We're in budget season. It's almost October. It's time to move on this, okay? And I think that the work that John has done provides a foundation that a professional architect can work with. So I like what I'm hearing from the board. I can understand John's desire to continue, but we could parse this forever. And as a taxpayer in this town, time is money. And the interest rates are climbing, and you very nicely described an opportunity we have. We have a window of opportunity here with bonds sunsetting to get on board, to bring in the right people, and to move this. And I support that wholeheartedly.
Thank you.
So I think you're headed down the right path, and I do realize that we all have something vested in this. John has quite a bit, but you know, we all need to realize it's time to take it up a notch and move it forward. And we could be here forever, moving walls and stuff like that. Let's bring in some people who really know how to do this.
Thank you.
Another thing.
Two
Oh,
comments.
sorry, Go ahead.
First, I'm not personally invested in this. And second, if the issue is the timing of retiring bonds, then you can simply, for 1 year, take that same amount and set it towards savings for the construction.
I just want to respond to something that Pat was asking about. So in terms of things that kind of carried over is the whole thought about having the window process where somebody comes in, they have different windows they can go to. The public is separated from the staff. In each of these designs, the staff have a different travel path than the public. So it keeps those two separated for security purposes and stuff like that. So we've incorporated all the things that we kind of learned in previous, iterations of this whole thing, because we've been doing this for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So, did we capture everything? I hope so. Did we capture a majority of stuff? Yes, we did. So, but,
I think that, I just want to say, John, I appreciate your time working on this, because I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, let me look at this, and I'm like, oh, no, you did that. I think there's a lot of things that you've done a great job moving over and moving forward, and as much as, yes, it would be great if we could have it even better, I'm sure, I'm not figuring out what exactly is, where all the tiny details are that, so I'm really excited, because so many things we've talked about are covered. Who's next to who? The safety, the windows, like there's so many things.
like for instance, that thought occurred to me too in terms of the finance clerk. Well, if we don't have a finance clerk, that space could be used for something else in
Right.
terms of growth. So it's not
Just
like it's
curious
gonna
what,
go
like-
used. I
Right.
don't think Andy's gonna close the door and says, nobody goes in there.
And by the
It'll
time
be
the
used for
building's
something.
built, it's very possible that we'll decide that there's something else that, so I do think having a basic,
Yeah,
some basic rooms, like what is NSF under welfare director?
net square foot.
NSF is net square feet,
Yeah.
What's
GSF
that?
is gross.
What's the room for that's the 9.5 by 7?
And that's just a-
Under welfare director on the second floor.
An extra room.
That's an extra.
Right, so there we have it. So there's a space that if we're looking at things and we need to change
That's
things.
the
we can-
space for the assistant town clerk, or tax collector, or no, assistant town
That
administrator.
would be the town adjacent to us.
That's where
Well,
we keep the puppies. Is that what you're saying?
In this design, if you look at the first floor, you see everything that's pushed into the basement, and that includes commissions and committee office, cemetery trustees office,
Right. So
supervisors of the checklist. So those are all listed as being in the basement.
Right, so those, one group of those can move up there, and then maybe
Right.
one of the finance stuff. So I think those are
And I
just,
didn't want to make the decision as to which one.
exactly. I appreciate that, because you don't want to make any enemies, you don't have to. But the point is, we don't have completely useless space. We also have enough room to adjust as our needs ebb and flow in different directions. I think that's going to be vital. We don't know exactly what every room, so they need to be reasonable office spaces that you could use for different things. Small one, big one, things like that.
That's all I have.
So we've had,
Reading between the lines of the gentleman that was here before, whose name I didn't get,
Andre, yeah.
Andre, and addressing what John was just saying, is this doable this year? I mean, are we really?
Well, we've
got a
had
train
two
here
people, I'm spacing a name from
Carino.
Carino, but I don't remember his name.
Jay.
Jay. So he came 2 weeks ago?
Yes.
2 weeks ago, and we had the same similar kind of conversation with him, and he thought it was possibly doable. The numbers he were throwing out were less than we kind of thought. I think he kind of needs to add something in terms of, site work and stuff like that, but yeah, he thought it was doable. Andre, I'm not sure. He kind of was promoting do it in March and then take a whole year to do it kind of thing.
That's a
So-
funding, I think
I think he
that
can
was
do
funding.
it, but I think his concern is how we're able to sell it.
Right,
Well-
Not the ability to build it, but the ability to
get it
the
to
money.
pass.
And in terms of seed money or paying for the construction manager or the architectural fees, that's something we can take it out of the capital reserve fund, or we still have money that's out of the
Right.
ARPA fund. So-
That's what I was thinking too, if we, there are things we could wait on, like the salt shed, and then use those funds to get us to go forward.
Well, you still have, uncommitted, you have $54,733.
Perfect, which covers more than what he said. So there's, we have, I think his concern is a lot of places don't have
Yeah,
money they can grab, so he's wanted to make sure we were gonna.
but the other thing we have to also be aware of, there's other things that necessarily aren't on this list that have been identified. so-
Exactly.
Including the software, if we decide
Yep,
to switch.
Yep, which is
Take that 50,000
just
right
about the
there.
54,000,
Yeah,
so,
look at
I think Andy
But
kind
there
of
is
played
money
it that
right
way.
in the capital reserve.
Right, and the capital reserve is a wise place to use that if that's what, we're gonna go forward. I don't wanna be part of another paid architect that gets us nowhere, so it makes me anxious, but if that's what you have to do, that's what you have to do.
One of the conversations I had had with Andre about 3 weeks ago, and I had mentioned, being involved in projects where the architect ran away with the show and just made it unsellable, and he looked at some of the plans that I had given him from previous attempts here in Lee and said, we could certainly give you some guidance. He said that if you use the construction management approach, he said, you're going to have to hire your own architect. He said, but we can very definitely give you some guidance to some very capable architectural firms who just do municipal buildings and understand what a reasonably priced municipal building has to look like. And
That'd be
he
helpful.
said there are a number of avenues you can go other than just, he said, hiring the usual suspects that are going to cost you large amounts of money for something you don't need and can't sell.
Well,
Right.
the other thing, in terms of those three modes of doing this particular project, John and I have done this enough times that we're kind of okay in terms of knowledge. Sorry, I'm speaking for you, I don't want to speak for you, but I'm not an expert. So I need somebody that's
Right.
in the trade that can say, okay, yeah, well, if you switch out this, you get the similar quality, but it'll save you a little bit of money. I want somebody that has that knowledge that can say, hey, think about this, versus somebody that comes in and say, okay, bang, 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 this is your number, we're all done. Oh, change order time, blah, blah, blah,
Yep.
They're not looking out for us, and I need somebody that needs to, or has that knowledge to do that. It's not me.
Right.
I can speak some of their lingo, but I have not even the same level of knowledge these people have, so, and I don't think,
I can drywall and paint up a storm, caulk, all that stuff, but I have not built a building from the
Are
ground.
you volunteering?
I'm itching to do those windows, I really need those done before the winter, so.
Have we given any more thought to design build versus construction manager?
They both had such great points, and so I feel like, for me, it's,
well, the other thing I was gonna ask, we've seen two. Is there anybody else on the horizon?
I have,
we should do the RFP.
there are two other firms that would happily come talk to you, that being Witcher and North Branch. And if you do the RFP, I'm not sure who's gonna.
Okay.
Reese and there's one other firm told me that they are too stretched out at this point to consider new projects.
Everybody says to get going on the RFP, I think that's the next step, right? And he's gonna send you some stuff, we'll cut that out and we'll get an RFP, and that way we know who the options are, what the options are, and get some more detail, and then we can make decisions from there.
Okay.
Does that
That sounds,
work
yes.
for everybody else? All right, Look at that.
So did you just say that your RFP is going to be so open-ended that you're not sure what it is you're hiring?
No, it's gonna be very clearly for these, oh, you mean as far as design, build, architecture?
As far as the delivery method?
Obviously, each company has a different delivery method, that's their preference, so it's not that it's so open that we don't care, it's that we need to know what their preference is. I mean, we had two people with similar requests, and they had such different opinions of which way to go. So I think we'd have to meet them to know.
Carino very definitely wants to be a design-build contractor.
Right. And the
Bound very definitely
clearly
wants to be a
doesn't.
construction
So
management.
for me, it's, I don't know, I don't have to have it a certain way, I want to be able to offer to the people in the town, this is the maximum amount of money you're going to spend, I can guarantee that, and we're not going to be coming to ask for more money soon, which both of them seem to say that we could do. Exactly how we get to that process is something I just...
And both of them have done it very recently for municipalities.
Right. So to me, it's less about exactly which kind, but who we can work with and what they can offer us.
Okay.
Do you have a different?
I'm leaning toward the construction management. I like that whole dynamic in terms of, well,
Is it, oh, interesting.
Because you're leaning towards the design.
well, I have to just be the
No,
opposite of you, so that, no, I'm just
I've
kidding. I'm just
noticed.
kidding. But I just like that particular relationship and dynamic. We did this building was design build. And there was, it's not gonna be there's gonna be no issues, but we had that particular problem with this building. We did design build, prices of materials went up, and we ended up, we had to make the building narrower, and we had to not finish the second floor because we ran out of money. And I am very desirous of saying, okay, it's gonna cost, X dollars, and it's not gonna be any more. And we're gonna get what we, planned out versus, oh geez, now we have to make the smaller building, or we not do this particular finishes, or you have to go back and ask for more money, which is even worse.
I don't want to do that.
So, but that's where I'm coming from.
How did you feel, Rebecca?
I mean, my draw towards design build was that it was one person that we're dealing, or one firm that you're dealing with. And so there's that advantage of having somebody who's going to design it and then build it, and only having to seek out one business
Right.
in our time frame.
Yeah, I think for me, unfortunately, I'm supposed to be deciding though, right? And I think there's benefits to both, so it's hard. That's why I think in the end, if we do the RFP, we'll have more information.
Well, specifically to John's point, RFP, are you gonna say you want to do this particular building, so you're looking at, what are you asking for?
Can we say in an RFP, we're open to either design, build, or architect?
Let me get some sample RFPs and talk with Andre on Wednesday. Hopefully, I'll contact him tomorrow morning, see if he can either send me or bring me some.
There's some things that are not open for discussion, like, there's certain things we need in the building, and we would very much like it to be as environmentally sustainable as physically possible. There's some things that are just, but then there's other things that we're not as, it has to be this or that, so it's
You
not.
just said as physically possible.
Well, it's
Which
physically possible
indicates you have an unlimited supply of dollars.
for our budget, which we have discussed around what that is.
Which means you have to make
Right.
a value judgment.
So we have to figure out who's going to be able to support us in those decisions.
Well, there's a positive to say, in terms of, I think, John, you can correct me, if we were to have a bond payment of $120,000, which is the $60,000 for the rent that we already do with the town office building, and the $60,000 that's the principal payment for this structure, that was what, 1.5?
Might be more like 1.2, but it also depends on whether you're doing level principal or level debt service.
And also interest rates are changing rapidly.
Well, that's what his thing,
Yeah.
because the last one was 3.28,
Yeah.
something like that, in June.
That would have been nice.
I think it was higher than that.
Okay.
So with level principal, if you're as high as 5%, that's 1.2 million.
Well,
And it's about 1.5 million, just a little under 1.5 with level debt service.
okay. But that's using 5%.
That's using 5%. Let me call up the history.
So if we went in saying, this is how much we've got, then you build a structure to that particular price. Because what Jay was telling us, he's thinking about 1.2, but I think he wasn't including some
He
things.
didn't know we had a basement, he didn't
Yeah,
include all
so,
the septic,
you know.
so.
So if we said it's like 1.5, if the interest rate only gets us a bond for, 1.2 million, you can use some of the funds in the town buildings trust fund, capital reserve fund, to augment that, or you just, build something that's smaller or whatever. So I think, I like the idea of having that conversation with somebody, but not Pat.
You're correct, Scott, that June 2022, 20-year was 3.38.
Oh, 3.3, okay.
Yeah.
So,
6 months before that, it was 2.09. 5 months before.
because depending on who you talk to, or who you listen to, we're in a recession, or we're going to be in a recession. And they're raising interest rates to curb inflation, so they're pushing the numbers up. But, the other thing we have to concern ourselves with, if we go into a recession, people stop building, people don't have enough work, prices of things go down.
Right.
That's what the Fed is trying to accomplish. So maybe they say, oh, your guaranteed maximum price is 1.5 million, and you come and you actually build it, oh, no, it's down to 1.3. And so, sorry.
How about site work? When the last project, there was a significant portion of that 3 point whatever it was that was site work. How much are you guessing would need to be in
I don't
this?
know off the top of my head, but that particular project had those multiple phases in it.
But it also had a big parking lot, and it had
Yeah.
water and sewer.
I think at least what I'm thinking is, you do the intersection so you can get access to this particular structure. You're gonna do a parking lot for that particular structure. You're gonna tie into the well that's gonna have to be moved, so there's a cost to that. And you're gonna put in a septic system for that particular structure.
So it's not a big, it's not.
So, yeah,
Not the
and
huge.
I'm not envisioning the parking lot that's there now being connected to this one at this particular time. That's more of a down the road, planning for it, but not,
Have the space, have it ready to go, but not necessarily.
because the other thing that we've talked about is, that's like phase one, if you will. Phase two is addressing the old town hall, fixing the septic system, and those particular things. They have to be addressed at some particular point.
Oh, I know, I was just wondering what was in this 1.5 in terms of site work, and it's minimal, it's just a parking lot for the building.
We're coming from the other side though, Pat.
Okay.
We're coming from, this is how much money we think we can do, what can we do for that particular amount? Or,
A lot of trees.
yeah, well, you have to take down the trees, there's nothing of value there, so it's gonna cost you something, but all those things. Anything else? Any other questions or concerns? We don't take complaints.
Forestry department wants to practice on there.
I think you get UNH kids out of it.
Can we?
Oh, what's the liability of that? Come on now.
No, we
They're well
enforced
covered
it.
by the university.
We did
Covered by the
prescribe,
university.
The liability coverage extends.
we did
to them.
prescribe burns when I was in forestry class, we did all kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, as long as they cover liability, so.
they do.
Yeah,
That's what the forestry students are doing, and then there's all this wood, I mean, I don't think we should not mention it.
Do you have time for a quick housekeeping item?
Yeah.
I was contacted by a member of the league greeters, and they want to baffle a quilt to kick off some fundraising. And had a vague memory that the select board has to approve of raffles in any given municipality.
How come we didn't approve the VFW's raffle at the fair? Yes.
That would be a violation of New Hampshire.
Thank you.
should yell at them.
They did not ask you. Any organization that is collecting money for a raffle is supposed to.
As far as I know, they didn't ask us, so.
League readers is asking us.
The league readers are asking if that would be permissible.
And the proceeds are for what purpose?
That I don't know
The
exactly.
proceeds are so that we could.
Oh, yeah, you're a greeter.
I am.
Can you speak to this particular issue?
I can. It's to have things to be able to offer new residents and to have,
So like little things that you
Yeah.
buy to give out.
right, so they're gonna ask for a small amount of money from the select board, and then their goal is to raise the rest of it.
You're gonna ask the select board to put it on the warrant that the taxpayers will provide. I'm not providing money.
All right, okay.
In the budget. Yes.
let them put it in.
So the point is that the goal is to not ask, and it's not to ask for that every year after year, it's to start coming in a sustaining way, so that you can offer those things without.
I'm okay with that.
And the next.
Do you need a motion or something?
If you made a motion to approve the
Sorry.
lead greeters quilt raffle, that would probably be more appropriate.
I'll make a, oh,
There we go. I'll second it and Katrin will make.
I'll make
the
a motion to approve the lead greeters quilt raffle.
Okay, so we've got a
Second.
motion by Katrin.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, say aye. Say
Do I
aye.
have to abstain because I'm on the lead graders?
No,
Okay.
there is no,
Personal
It
benefit?
depends on how Rebecca's voting.
It's fine. I do wonder though about why a quilt, and if there was a choice made there.
They have
They
a
have a
quilt
quilt.
that they would like to raffle, and so that was a,
I was just gonna throw out there that in the many auctions, raffles, things that I have been in charge of, quilts do not necessarily go well.
I have noticed that as well.
Okay, I decided to throw that
It
out
was a
there.
patriotic one on a voting day, I think is what they were thinking about.
Are we raffling it on voting day?
That's what they're saying at the,
I spoke with Ms. Stone, who did not give me a specific date, but asked if I would approach the
Are there
select
any
board.
issues with,
yeah, I thought that was the whole question, was can we raffle it on voting day? What was the question you just asked?
Can you have the raffle, because you need
Oh,
select
at all.
board, right,
Okay.
you need select board permission to have a raffle in
Okay.
town if you're going to collect money.
Got it.
And if you were going to hold it at the polling place, the next permission you would need would be from the moderator.
Right,
okay,
perfect.
that was my question.
So it would be up to Mr. Quigley as to whether he felt it was appropriate. Although I will say I've been to polling places year after year after year where various organizations have raffled
And they
quilts.
sell stuff too.
I'd rather they have a bake sale.
Well, I mean, if you're willing to help us bake, I'll be happy to have that. But we might not have the Alistair team full of bakers ready to go.
The thing that they used to have when they did the voting, you know how it was in the gym? You come in, you do your check-in, over to the left where the supervisors, that used to be the place where they sell coffee, donuts, baked goods,
Yeah.
Yes.
and they made lots of money, but it takes a lot of time.
Right, and that's the problem, I'm working all day that day, there's only so many of us, some of us have full-time jobs, or Liz is working that day, so it's like, we can't really
But
do a bake sale, but you have
If the
a,
moderator is okay with it, you could set up the little thing to sell your tickets for the quilt
right,
and sell big
That's true.
things in the cafeteria.
that's true. I will mention it to them again and see, but I think the raffling was the gambling thing, so we had to get that permission, but you're saying that you are also giving permission to sell other items.
I haven't been asked that yet, but
Well,
can we?
You don't need select board permission to sell baked goods, it's
Thank
just the
you.
raffles.
Preemptively.
So in terms of the eyes, did we have three
I think
eyes or?
Rebecca donated some baked goods, is that what you heard as well? I felt like I heard that.
I do not want to put on the spot.
Fabulous.
So did we have three eyes or only two
Yes,
eyes? We had
yes.
three eyes?
I have no problem with
So
them.
motion
Bring a
passes,
raffle.
Yes.
Mr. Town Administrator.
Was cautioning that
I
perhaps.
had
that
to
was
pass
the
unanimous.
Do you want to raffle a cake? That could be pretty cool.
Sure.
I
You
mentioned
can
that.
have like a pre-made cake or they get to pick a cake.
You decide, you could have one there at the day and they could raffle, or you could have one that you say,
Let
Here's
me
some
look at my
pictures.
schedule,
All
or
right.
whatever that day is.
that sounds exciting.
So I'm sorry to throw a wrench in this whole RFP thing. I actually did a lot of research
Go, girl.
Good.
and I've been writing things. There's also something called a request for qualifications, which
Okay.
might actually be more the route we want to go. And I've been trying to discern exactly what the difference is, but I think that request for qualifications allows you to be more open to a design build versus construction manager.
Love that, look at her go.
I have started a Google Doc with a lot of the stuff in it already, including the adjacencies that have been planned into and the rooms that are kind of required.
Mhm.
I can certainly share that, and we can, I don't know what the rules are for looking at it and editing it.
Looking at a draft and editing are fine, we cannot make any decisions about a draft, so we'd have to discuss any decisions we make to keep it or not keep it at the next meeting.
Okay, because I don't know how, like if Andy gets something from Bowen, like who's in charge of it? So maybe he could take the thing I have and incorporate it in and create something more full, because mine's definitely not full. And there is a link at the top, because I stole Barrington's request for qualifications, and I didn't want to lose the link because I lost it, then I had to find it again.
Yeah.
It's a pain in the butt, so you can ignore that.
So
Thank you.
send it to Andy. Andy can send it to us. When you make your comments, send it only to Andy. And then that won't even precipitate a discussion.
Yes, and I can surely,
Okay.
if you've got Barrington's, I can talk to Connor too. Connor has told me multiple times that he's happy to share anything.
That's great.
Have you been to Barrington yet?
Thank you for doing that.
I have not been to
Well,
Barrington.
I'm not
All right.
much really.
We can just go.
Yeah, I know. My work is changing.
It is.
Yes, my work is changing.
Tell me,
I'm
to what?
I'm not, I'm employed, but I don't have to do anything. Oh, I shouldn't be saying this.
okay.
So
He's just
my,
kidding.
my days, on certain days that haven't been determined yet, starting next week, are, I
More
can be
free.
available in the
So
day.
Rebecca, do you still have days that you don't go into work? You work Monday, Friday?
Barrington is closed on Friday.
I do not go into work on Thursdays.
So does that mean that we could have some meetings then instead of having them tonight all night?
I recently a family member diagnosed with cancer. So
Oh,
I
I'm
will be
sorry.
using part of those days to manage
Got it.
their,
I'm sorry.
help them manage their lives.
Okay, so no meetings during those days.
So I can do my best to be available. I'm trying to manage all of the things plus that. So it's okay, sorry, but they have small children and it's important.
Absolutely.
We'll play it by ear.
Yeah.
So yes, I will do my best to be there,
No, that's okay.
so.
But yeah, it doesn't mean we can't go more than once either. So-
No, and as long as I can give Connor a little bit of heads up, and I do know that he has the ability possibly to let us in on Friday too when no one's there.
Okay.
So I think he's there.
Okay, I'm free, so let me
Okay.
know when you guys are free and we can.
Well, it'd just be nice that we at least go and see what they did. Their structure is bigger than what we're planning, but,
By quite a bit.
There are
So-
10,000 square feet, I believe.
yeah, well,
All right. no,
maybe
I-
ours will be 10,000 too if we go and get a $1.5 million from the government to do. That's the other thing. Can we get, do you have information on that whole process?
Yeah.
Yes.
I do.
Okay.
We're not
It
the
just says-
So-
lightning isn't going to strike necessarily on top of
What's the deadline? April of 2000?
I don't, I think that April is when they start accepting applications, as I recall.
So we have to plan it with our money, and then if we find out that there's a fabulous windfall, great,
Yep.
and then we can put
Yeah.
that money back to the
Well,
taxpayers.
the thing is, as long as we word the article, and it should be worded that way, that the legislative body is giving the board permission to bond up to,
Yes,
because we can bond for zero.
right.
And that's what Barrington did.
Yeah,
When I
so,
talked to Connor, he said that a huge part of their, he said this sounds strange, but a big part of the draw for us getting selected was that it was our 300th
Right, which, yeah.
anniversary, he said, and that we were paying huge storage fees. That they had rented off-site storage to keep their files.
We're paying large storage fees for all of our humans to work in a building. And I feel like that
well, we've
should-
got you're renting an office building.
Yeah,
They
that's
were renting an
okay.
office
They were renting an
building.
office
It's our
building, they were renting off-site storage.
It's our 200 and.
So we just don't have the offsite storage, so if they got 1.5, we don't have offsite storage, maybe we'll get $1 million.
Mr. Bugby, what year are we incorporated, 1776, 66?
No, 66. 10
So-
years. We were part of Dover. Durham broke off from
Right.
Dover,
So-
and then we broke
Yeah.
off from,
1766.
Oh.
Durham was really Oyster River
Yeah,
plantation.
okay.
Can
But
we make a big deal out of some number?
Uh,
Did we just do our 275th? That what it was?
yeah, we did 250, so you need 25 more years from 2016.
I don't
so-
think it, I mean, why does that have to be even number? Can't we just like, it's our 200 and,
Well, wait a minute. They don't want us to be part of it, but Dover's having their 400th anniversary this year, so
you can't build a
really,
building based
this
on
land
Dover.
is part of that particular.
Right, okay, so can you let Chris Pappas know that we're really reaching here?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, I think.
Our
we're
town
getting this done.
originally was a part of Dover, which is celebrating their 400th anniversary.
This is absolutely relevant.
I'll reach
So
out
you
to
have to
Ms.
reach
Levitt too.
Hey, you gotta reach,
Thanks.
because these federal people, they just kind of skim and, oh.
All right,
yep,
all right,
yep,
let's
yep.
not start slandering people that work.
That work where?
Right.
Us, all of us.
I work for the federal government, I can slander them.
No, thank you.
Anything else? Nope. So Monday, what do we have? Anything special?
Indigenous Peoples' Day, but we haven't changed the name
Oh,
yet.
I'm sorry, and weren't we supposed to talk at some point about children's cancer? Did we ever do that?
Children's cancer.
Wasn't it children's cancer?
Yeah, adopt, I forget the message, it's,
What do we have
it was
to do?
actually in your consent agenda, I think you may have.
Already
For
done
next
it.
Done
week?
that.
Are we-
I think we
oh,
did
okay,
it,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, I'm sorry.
Oh, for next Monday.
No, I think it was in the
We
consent
signed it
agenda for the
already.
last meeting, as I recall, and it's a community awareness, you had to agree to be part of it. You asked some questions about it. If it's not, it
We'll
will
look into
be
that.
I don't.
be coming on the next,
Okay.
Our next time that this group gets to spend quality time together is,
Next Monday.
next Monday, the 3rd.
oh,
Yeah.
September is gone.
okay, I'm sorry, the 10th is. And did we ever want to discuss the name of the holiday on the 10th? As a town? You mentioned it months ago.
Indigenous People Day versus Columbus Day versus
Correct.
something else.
Also known as Rebecca's birthday, but I don't think we can call it that.
Really?
Yeah,
Is
going
it
forward.
Rebecca's?
It is.
It is my birthday.
Ooh.
Sorry, I added you, but.
Could you make yourself a cake and then bring it so we can have some?
Stop now. I can also make cakes, you know. All
Yeah,
right,
but-
so.
yeah, but I don't know.
What flavor you want?
Oh my
I gotta decide what I'm
gosh.
making for the thing.
Yeah, that's a 13th, 14th,
That is
14th.
the 13th.
I forget to do it.
So next select board meeting, can we put on the agenda to discuss the naming of the day? Is that an option?
You're talking about the 3rd?
On the 3rd for the 10th.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Did Joanne run checks? I didn't get one. My quarterly.
We also, did we answer the question that you asked us, what day is today? Today's Monday. Thursday, about whether or not spouses were invited to the volunteer appreciation dinner?
Oh,
I remember talking about it.
yeah, I danced around that, didn't I? Do a good job?
Yes, I feel like we have to add,
Absolutely.
I think we have to answer that question, because have all the committees been informed that this is happening, they should come, and,
They have, yes.
Okay.
Denise has sent all the committees,
Mhm.
and that was some of the first questions she got back from committee members and also from one employee.
Do we have any idea how many people are showing up?
We don't at this point.
That would be my only concern, that if we say spouses are available, are invited, do we have enough space downstairs?
But let me see if I
I
can
would
get a little tighter estimate for Monday night.
Yeah.
See if there's any kind of,
Because we invited the employees, so that's like, what, 27?
Yeah.
They're not all gonna show
Not all
up.
gonna show up, and not all the volunteers are gonna show
And
up.
in terms of the volunteers and all the committees and stuff, how many is that? Another 30? Probably.
probably.
So
We meet
that's-
again on Thursday, huh?
Potentially, that's 50, 55,
people.
110 people. And the tables downstairs, I think your max is 92.
I think we'll be fine.
Chief can let us know, but,
I'll stay home if you need me to.
I think you're in charge of something.
yeah, you're in charge of something.
Salad.
Yeah,
I can drop that
bring
off
it
at
in
later.
and drop it.
Jeez, keep my spouse at home too.
So that's my only concern in terms
Okay.
of if you have enough space.
Let me see if I can get a feel for,
And don't we have a lot of volunteers, the same volunteers in different committees?
Yeah, some of those, yeah.
That's a good.
there's a lot of crossover.
So I think we're absolutely fine to invite spouses. If there's a problem, then I will stand outside with my salad, and I will tell some of my friends to stand
Can I get
outside as
pictures
well.
of this?
Yes, absolutely, I will bring
So
blankets.
are we okay with saying, okay, the
Yes.
spouses
Yes.
and significant others?
Yep.
So we don't,
Oh,
yes.
a plus one is okay.
I like
Because
that.
what if you
Leave the
get a
children
new
at home.
volunteer that way? Maybe they
Plus
don't
one.
realize the things that we're volunteering, now that they'll be inspired.
Okay.
The official term is plus one.
Plus one.
Yeah,
I said
I
leave
like
the
that.
children at home. That was my only
What
point.
about the polygamists?
I'm pretty sure that's.
Do we
They
have
can
any of
pick their
those?
favorite
State of
plus
New
one.
Hampshire.
We have some polygamists here?
This conversation is going downhill fast. Did
It
we
is
adjourn this meeting yet?
real
Because
damn
we are
real
gonna get ourselves in
friends.
trouble.
Is there any other business? Because he's the one that started with administrative.
I'm sorry, it was my fault.
I have no other business at this
You all
time.
set? So motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? It's not
Pick one of
debatable.
us, doesn't matter.
All those in
Not
favor say
debatable.
Aye.
Aye.
How come Carrie could just say
So
motion
what are
adjourned
we,
and get
what
it?
would you like? What's your request?
But it's your birthday.
For the volunteer dinner.
Oh.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Because I keep wanting to do that, and it was no, and I'm like, but wait, that's
Something
how I
that's
did it
good,
for
all
a
your stuff
year.
is usually good anyway, so.
I
it
didn't know
doesn't-
if you had a particular flavor.
Shut the audio
Well,
off.
you're not making it for me anyway, so.
Well, I still need inspiration, so I
Why are you asking him about inspiration?
Would you like,
Did
do
you
you
talk
have
to
an
him?
opinion